All right. Well, welcome again to our Raw and Refined, the Gentleman's Hour, where we always like to start off with our beverage as a toast to each other and to our crowd that's listening as well. Today's topic is fatherhood, and we thought, what's a good drink to go along with that? So, we're going to toast each other today with the classic, the Manhattan. And I'm using a Maker's Mark as my whiskey or bourbon of choice, of course, with the sweet vermouth and bitters to go along with it. So, to my brothers and to our audience, toast of the Manhattan.
Yes, sir. The Manhattan with Woodford on it. So
There you
Woodford.
go. There you go.
Well,
There
I'm
you
making
go.
mine. I'm making mine, John, with the J. Henry and Sons. This is a Wisconsin straight bourbon that I'm using with mine. It's a
Ah,
5 year aged bourbon, small batch, quite tasty, brother. It
that's
also goes,
local.
yeah, it also goes really nicely in the honey bourbon bacon salad I get from Jules. It's a little
Honey bacon.
splash of real bourbon in the honey bacon bourbon, honey bourbon bacon salad, brother.
I
There
like
you
Wow.
that.
go.
I
There you
like
go.
that. All right. Great choice. Great choice, brothers.
Yes, sir.
So, welcome, listeners. Thanks again for joining us. We appreciate y'all listening in. We appreciate y'all telling your people about the podcast and passing it along. Just last weekend, we celebrated Father's Day. We put out a special message to fathers on Father's Day because we had, we knew we wanted to have this conversation, but we weren't going to be able to get it done before Father's Day, and we didn't want to rush it. It deserved the time and the consideration and the quality. So we said, we'll get that message out and then we'll come back around and have this conversation. So we wanted to reflect on what fatherhood means. We were looking at the reality of our friendship, our brotherhood, and how different really our own paths, our own fatherhood relationships were growing up, how we are now, how kind of different they are, but still similar in many respects. So we just wanted to kind of explore that and see how these different paths that we've all taken parallel in time and parallel in geography as well as interconnected in terms of the relationship, but still three individual paths. So where we all kind of came from and where we're at now. So the idea was kind of it was built on this juxtaposition of our very different journeys, all still leading to growth, love, and evolving understandings of manhood. Again, because of that kind of interconnectedness of the three of us. So, we're going to kind of touch on a few different things: growing up with a father, growing up without a father, becoming fathers ourselves or not, and still having fatherhood find us, what we've learned, what we'd like to pass on, those kind of things. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I think this will be a pretty interesting conversation. I've been looking forward to it. Been knowing these cats for decades, knowing their families, being involved in their lives, and the interesting kind of realities of how different our paths are, even though they're so connected to each other.
Hmm.
Yep.
Outstanding. Yep. Let's get this
Jump on
thing
in.
rocking. I think
So
that go ahead, GK.
no, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I just saying that I think this is one timely because of us hitting it around Father's Day as well, but also this is Men's Health Month, so all of that can play into the conversation as we discuss this. And as you said, Rich, it's not just about genetically who we're associated with, but we are also father figures to others that may not have our same genetic line as well. So mentoring and just guiding and being present, I think will be all part of our conversation today as well. So I'm like you, man. I've been excited about this conversation as well.
Awesome. Well, I for me, I think about the fathers. that I've had. You know, I think I've had an embarrassment of riches as it relates to fathers. I had my stepfather, may he rest in peace, whose home I grew up in with my mother. And then I had my biological father, who's still here, both with different kinds of impacts on me. And so having both of them today in retrospect really feels like I was blessed. Two totally different personalities, two
Mm-hmm.
totally different perspectives on the
Mm-hmm.
world, and I think it helped make me appreciate just my own lived experience. And so, my stepfather from the South, hardworking, took on, the leadership of the house for me and my brother, and just really his strength of purpose and willingness to take on raising us. Truly, at the time, I didn't fully appreciate as a youngster. Just was like, who is this guy marrying my mom, right? But
Mm-hmm.
kept he kept us in check, and made sure that despite all of the things that we could have gotten in trouble for, he helped us steer clear of it. And so his toughness, his gruffness back then, while it bothered me, as an adult, I fully understand it and appreciate it. And then on the other hand, my biological dad, who I always thought was the smartest guy in the room, and he was sworn law enforcement officer. So when he'd come pick me up from work, he'd have on his crisp white shirt, and he just cut this image of like this really smart, sort of urbane man. And so I found myself sort of wanting to copy him, but also every day experiencing my stepfather, who, just truly together gave me a really broad perspective on black men, a broader perspective on what fatherhood could be. And so, yeah, it just, it was an interesting time, as a youngster, because my stepfather was kind of tough. There were times he made me mad, right? And then, my biological father could kind of be this mythological figure who really was a strong, like they were just polar opposites in terms of personality. But I've come to learn and appreciate that it is those two different types of outlooks and personalities that made having a stepfather and a father such a powerful thing and helpful for me growing up. So,
Yeah, you had two grown men built in that were in your corner the whole way. That is exceptional. Even though you probably in certain moments, Mr. Robertson wasn't the nicest guy, but I never saw that side of him. Luckily, he was always super cool to me. When we came,
Mm-hmm.
hey Richard, I was like, how you doing, sir? He was always super cool.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't get a touch of that.
no, he just challenged, in retrospect,
Mm-hmm.
really was just challenging us to be disciplined and responsible. And, and you telling that to a preteen, trying to teach that to a preteen,
Right.
regardless, is a hard thing to do.
Right.
But he made us work. He made sure that the house was in order before he got home from work. The man would cook after work before my mom got like. And so, while again, as a youngster, you didn't fully appreciate those things, but as I got older, I really began to appreciate just how extraordinary he was as a father, as a human being.
And he had already programmed you at that point.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So you didn't even use automatic. You didn't even think about it. Now it's all
No.
built in at this point.
Yep. Yep.
Hmm.
Outstanding, man. Yeah. So, for me, my journey is a little bit different. I really didn't grow up with a father figure in my world. I had my mom and my grandmother, who, of course, instilled, my values, love, discipline, support, needs and everything from that standpoint. But, as you grow as a male, you don't, if you don't have that representation or example to try to help you navigate what it means to be a male or a man, it's still something that's missing. So I paid attention a lot to when I was with you guys and with your families, which, are my family as well. But it helped me to have some depth as to what that means to grow as a man. And so my biological father is still living, but I still don't know him very well. And through the years, I will say that there may have been circumstances as to why that didn't occur. As I became an adult, I will have to accept some of that responsibility myself as to why some of that still has not occurred. But when I turned 50, something came about that I wanted to try to reconnect with this male who we share genetics with. And the funny part about it is that I don't know what to call him when I'm with him. So I've shared this
Mm-hmm.
with you guys that, I don't call him dad. I don't call him father. I don't call him John. It's weird. We just have conversation, and I don't have quote a title or whatever for him as of yet. He has other children as well and different relationships throughout the way as it relates to that. I'm the oldest of the tribe. So when I had the opportunity to meet him when I was 50, and they all knew of me, but I didn't know of them. After I turned 50, I had the opportunity to go see my dad, see my father, see the man who gave life to me in his hometown. Decided to visit, and it was there that was able to connect with some of my siblings that I have, realizing that I'm the oldest out of the tribe, and they all knew of me, but I didn't know of them. And that
Okay.
was disturbing. And, just like,
Mm-hmm.
wow. But also, I knew earlier in life that he did have another son after me when I was younger, and he named his son John. So this was something that I think has probably affected me throughout the years to know that there's another son with my name, like the Georges and George Foremans and all of them.
Right.
But for me, I couldn't quite grasp my head around that and said that, well, I guess I was just forgotten or let go of or whatever. And been replaced with the new John. So I've, since of course moved on, and we'll get into a little more about us being fathers or a father figure as we continue the conversation. But to give a little background, yeah, that's where didn't quite grow up with a father figure, and it did in my mind affect how I felt I was as a father.
Well, from the outside looking in, I think however it shaped you, I think you turned out as a great father. So you took what life gave you and you learned some good lessons from it and you picked up stuff along the way. And, and I'm sure that a lot of the good stuff did come from your mom and grandmom too. So put it all together into a nice package.
I'll say.
You got great kids that are doing great things. It's clear you and Allison did a great job. And see, I threw in Allison that time too, not like last time. We had to give the shout outs to the wives, and whatnot. No, but I guess I had probably the most like the quote unquote traditional family setting, a mother, a father, 2.0 kids, right? So that my brother and we grew up in a single family home for most of my childhood. We moved from the west side of Chicago to Maywood when I was probably 5, something like that. Was in that house till I came home from college. So yeah, 2 working parents, that whole thing. My old man, as I always called him. And interestingly, John, of course, you all know this because you were always there, but I didn't call my father dad or father growing up. His name was Raymond, right? Everybody called him Ray. And so that's what I always heard people call him. So that's what I called him, you know.
Yep,
And
that's true. It used to amaze me when he did
It
that.
for
amazed me too.
Yes.
my brother and I always called him Ray,
Mm-hmm.
and never thought anything about it. He never corrected us. He never said to call me this or call me that. I didn't call other people's fathers by their first name. Down the street, Mark, his father was Mr. Taggart, or at first I used to call Mr. Robeson Mr. Kelly.
Yep.
He
Yep.
was super
Yep.
smooth with it, man. It didn't even phase him. As again, we again saying I never saw the gruff that you experienced, GK. That was for you. It was necessary.
Yep.
My father, in terms of what kind of father he was a megalithic superhuman giant in stature as a child growing up. I mean, see the effect that I have on. I'm about the same size as him, as he was, about 6'5", and I see the impact that I have on little kids. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
they're how big their eyes get when I get close, and they're like, "Whoa, look at this giant." So that was the house I grew up in. Greg, your
Yep.
biological father,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
big guy. When you're little, that's this big giant dude is picking you up and carrying you around and teaching you and doing stuff and all of that kind of stuff. So he would one difference I think growing up as a shorty, he drove trucks. He was a truck driver. He drove trucks in the Marines when he was in Vietnam. He drove the big people movers and equipment movers and all of that kind of stuff. But he loved driving, and so when we were young, he drove over the road. So he would be gone for several days in a row, kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And so he ended up eventually driving local so that he would be home every night. And so I know that probably made life a little better on mom's. She had two boys that were 11 months apart. I was the younger. There was always,
Irish twin.
yeah,
Irish twin.
yeah,
Right.
it was always there, so it was always nonstop energy, of pretty much the same mind growing up, especially getting into stuff. So,
Mm-hmm.
there was often that conversation when my father first got home from being on the road. Him and the moms would be in the kitchen. She would be, I don't know, fixing him some food or whatever, or might be having him a drink, but we would be eavesdropping in the other room because there was that point where the conversation shifted to, let me tell you about what they did. you know and then it was, uh-oh, take off. But then a minute later you'd hear, hey, yo, and that's all he would say, and we'd come scuttle into that room. We were highly disciplined, and when I say that, I don't mean that he beat us. I mean that we were highly disciplined little children. I used to get teased as a shorty because I didn't slouch. I basically stood at attention as a shorty because Vietnam veteran Marine. That's how we stood. We stood at pretty much at attention just naturally. In grammar school, kids used to tease me, why do you stand like that? And I'm like, what?
Mm-hmm.
That's just how you stand. You know,
Mm-hmm. Right.
yeah, pretty much all the time. That was just the world that we grew up in. It's very disciplined. I mean, when we were out in public, I've said this story a million times. We healed like dogs. I'm on one side, my brother's on the other side. He could have walked around in a little circle. We'd have been running around him trying to stay on his six. Just how we behaved in public. Wasn't none of that. You see how kids act nowadays. I know tantrums. I remember, when I was a teenager, asking my mother, did I ever do something like that? And she was like, you knew better.
Mm-hmm.
No, we
Mm-hmm.
didn't. It was just very disciplined, especially in public, but very loving, very emotional dude at the crib.
Mm-hmm.
You got the full spectrum with him as a shorty. So, I think that's something that's always stuck with me. My view of fatherhood is definitely built on the foundation that he provided. When I look at and maybe rightly or wrongly judge other fathers for how they're doing, he's for me the standard. I think he got it right in many respects. I by no stretch think of him as perfect. There, of
Mm-hmm.
course, are a number of things that I think he could have done better or whatever. But when you look at the full package, he is a standard by which I measure people's performance as a father, definitely.
Well,
Yeah.
I'm with you on that. Like again, a lot of this is thinking about it like as an adult at this stage of my life, but I
Mm-hmm.
realize having had my dad and my stepfather kind of influencing me in different ways at the same time, sort of gave me, I think, an appreciation for just how hard it is to raise kids, for one thing, but also the important role that moms play, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so this notion of, not being perfect, right? And understanding that you've got someone there who's sort of helping you appreciate these people in different ways, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I've found that to be true even in my own fatherhood journey, right? Y'all know I've been married and have kids out of wedlock separately, but they all kind of like mesh very well,
Mm-hmm.
They
and I
do.
think that is a testament to mom, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's my ex-wife or my kids' moms, right? It was the courage that they exhibited, to say, we're going to create. It's not a sort of traditional situation, traditional
Mm-hmm.
family,
Yeah.
but it's important that these kids love each
Mm-hmm.
other. It's important that they have some relationship to each other, and even though I know that's wasn't always the easiest thing for them, much like my mom, right, or much like
Mm-hmm.
my stepfather, but it was this blending thing that, while I know it was challenging for people, it was because of the leadership, of moms that made it work. That's making it work, even for me as a father today. I can only imagine if it was like mom being like, "Your dad ain't nothing," or
Mm-hmm.
kids' moms being like, "Your daddy ain't nothing," right? Or
Mm-hmm.
just like creating conflict amongst them. And I just feel really blessed that I didn't have that
Yeah.
experience either as a kid or as an adult. And so the leadership and keeping focused on what matters most, I think has made what I think for a lot of people is challenging. Blending
Mm-hmm.
families can be challenging, but
Yeah,
I've
you
been,
guys have done a great job of that.
yeah.
Seeing it up close and personal all these years, and it used to amaze me. It stopped amazing me a while ago. It became, just kind of, it's like, okay. But yeah, it was really, really well executed. But again,
Mm-hmm.
having come from a life of being a family law lawyer at one point, I did a lot of divorces. I did a lot of child support, seen a lot of baby mama drama up close, and seeing how selfish parents can
Mm-hmm.
wreck a kid because of their own using the child as a pawn, using the child as a way to get back at the other parent versus actually making decisions in the best interest of the children. And so yeah, definitely you all have done an incredible job
Mm-hmm.
of creating this multi-layered blended
Mm-hmm.
family. Being at Morgan's graduation, what, about a month or so ago, was just an incredible example of that, to see that in action. We took a lot of great pictures, and seeing how all of, for me, the coolest part was watching Miles dote on all of his sisters. You know, Miles is the oldest,
Mm-hmm.
the only boy, and he's got this group of beautiful sisters of all ages, and just they just love him so much. It's just so cool to see. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and you
Yeah.
you know somebody that, if somebody walking up and just not knowing, would just be like, okay, well, this is just a really cool family. You might think this is just the way the siblings love each other. You might just walk up and think it's a traditional family, not
Yeah.
knowing that there's more than one mom involved here. The way that they interact with each other is just so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I think again the key for all of it is the mom. Like, as much as we talk about fatherhood, we have our roles and all of
Mm-hmm.
that. I don't think you can talk about fatherhood without talking about motherhood, right? And
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's supposed to
having
be two halves, right? It's supposed
exactly,
to
Mm-hmm.
it's
exactly,
supposed to be two halves operating together in whatever form that turns out to be, using you as that example, but still. So it's those two halves working together, as opposed to, working against each other. that
Hmm.
creates that. So
Part of our continuation of this conversation is how do we feel we've become as fathers in our current situations? And Greg, you already kind of touched a little bit on it, but I know you probably have more on it as well. For us, Allison is an attorney, and she is currently associate dean of diversity, equity, and inclusion at a law school in North Carolina. And I agree with you, Greg. It's the moms have a tremendous impact on how we do, even as fathers, how we raise our children as well. I mean, I definitely feel they're the soul of the family, in my opinion. We may be the backbone of that, but I think that the soul of it comes through them as well. And part of it, and I want to touch on this a little bit, Bros, is that there's no innate understanding of being a father. That it's I think that there has to be some, what's the term I'm looking for? Some education, some guidance. I'm losing the term that I think I want to say, but there has to be something there to help have an understanding of how to approach fatherhood. With
well,
Allison,
that's so society. There should be some socialization, maybe
hmm
some tradition,
hmm
some sort of basic indoctrination that should be getting passed along. Right?
right.
Because like you say, it's not automatic, it's not built in, and instinct around parenting, women got 98% of the whatever was in the
hmm
bucket. 98% of it went to women, and
Right.
2% of the instinct went to
Right.
men, right?
Right. And I agree with that. And so, with me being a physician, of course, as folks kind of look at the outside of our family dynamics, we've been referred to as the Huxtables, given the reference of the Cosby Days type deal, and it's
And it
one that.
fits, Bob. And it fits.
Yeah, we got our dynamics of that as well too. So it's interesting. It's wonderful. I mean, I've got two amazing kids, and they're adults. They're adulting. They're doing absolutely great. But coming up, it was hard to understand how to be effective in their lives for me. So, because I just didn't have that understanding of what is my role as dad. Socially it would be the disciplinarian, the provider, type of situation. But I felt there was more to that. I thought there was more to playing the games and teaching my kids sports, or sitting at the tea party set with my daughter, and things of that nature. But I always felt like I wasn't the best father that I probably in my mind thought I should have been. And I don't know what that is, except probably putting my own perception of what I wanted to have as a father growing up, and if I was providing that for my children. And I think Allison has always been an amazing support of me, and saying, that yes, you've done great, as father to them and my children as well. But I don't know what that is about me and why I keep having this gap or hole, or just still not feeling like, did I do a good job. But again, they're grown, they're doing fine, and I think that's all that I can at least say, thank you, Lord, for is that that guidance helped me to help instill in them values and love and support and being independent, and but knowing that they still have us as their safety net, so to speak, if they ever need us as well. So this thing called fatherhood is amazing, man. That's you have lives that you're taking care of throughout, and then you got to let them go. You know what I mean? They become your focus. They become your responsibility. Don't let anybody, hurt them or do anything against them, because then that inner rage or spirit or whatever comes out. that you may not even known you had, you know. So if something affects your children, that takes on a whole nother level with you as well as a father. And then when it's time to be a disciplinarian again, my disciplinarian was I'll say my grandmother. My mom did okay, but really I think it was my grandmother that was my disciplinarian. So I was taken from what she provided to me as to how do you discipline kids, you know, and yet again, societal impression may have been, well, maybe I'm not quite doing that the way a father's supposed to do it, but that's the only way I know how to do it type deal. So, but a lot to that, yeah, a lot to that, brothers, a lot to that. So yeah.
It's an interesting way you've framed this question of have you did you do a good job or not? And
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an answer. Like there's a way in which I said I focused a lot on what the my fathers were like. I don't know if I've done a good job or not. You know, I don't even know if I'm the person to even make that judgment. Right? I know there are a lot of ways that I know I could have done better. I can continue to do better. Right? Um, but you know, when people say you've done a good, I'm like, I don't know. We'll see. It's kind of like we'll see how things turn out. And you know, again, there are things that you just don't control. You get really lucky sometimes. You get really blessed sometimes. And so this notion of feeling whether you did a good job or not is something that I know that I wrestle with even now, even as my kids are, you know, they all are doing really well and so forth. So it's an ongoing challenge to think through and worry about. And you know, I will say
Okay, let me
this
clear
though.
this up for you both. All right. All right. So you can get over this mess. All right.
But I do want to say this
No,
though.
no, seriously, just quickly. There's objective and subjective perspectives, right, on just about
Mhm.
everything. And so, even me saying this is right because it's going to be clear that I'm just, there's some subjectivity because of our relationship, right?
Right.
But looking at things objectively, no serial killer children, no, seriously, you've got well educated, well adjusted, good people,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
When you look at your children,
Yeah.
even in the case of you, Greg, your youngest is just
Hmm.
she has the ability to melt hearts instantaneously, right? But
Mhm.
she doesn't use her powers for evil.
Right.
Right.
That,
Hmm.
She's she's a very
Right.
cool person too,
that's for sure.
as a little kid. So I mean, that's like, again, part of that definitely goes to the moms, but you are the father for all of them, and all
Yeah.
of them you can see you in, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Same with you, John. Not just in both cases for both of you, not just because physically it's clearly genetically that these are your spawn, right? No, seriously, they look like you in some way, they act like you in some way, but all of the we know that part of our personality is genetic, so that part of it is, your because of you, and then the part that's not genetic is also in part because of you, because
Mhm.
of what you've been doing, right? And in both cases, what you're still doing. It's not
Yeah.
like they became adults and you might have shipped them out of your house physically, but that's the only part that's changed. And even then, they still come back,
Hmm.
right? They're always there. They just have
Right.
more places to go now
Right.
because,
Yeah.
because they've got
Right.
your place and their place,
Right.
but objectively, you're doing a great job. So,
Well, you know,
I'll say that, and y'all use it for whatever, or you might just say, okay, thanks, and still
I
fret
appreciate
about
that.
it,
I appreciate that. I think partly because it's a job never done. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's an ongoing thing. But
Yeah.
one of the funny things that I've observed about myself in parenthood is that growing up, I always wanted to make my mom proud. I wanted to make my parents proud of me. But there was a moment in which I realized that I also wanted my kids to be proud of me. And it's like this funny
Mm-hmm.
thing that happened once when Miles said something and he was like, "Man, I didn't know this about you." And and it makes me proud of you, man. That was like that,
Hmm.
and that was fairly, within the last few years or so. And so that transition from being a son who wants to make his parents proud to being a father where they want your kids to be proud of you, man, that's
Wow, I've got to jump in on
a
that because that
powerful
made
thing.
me think about something, Greg. That made me think about my father's funeral and me being proud of him. I guess much in the way that you're talking about, but the level of pride I felt for him on that day because of on that day learning about all of the other people's lives that he touched that I knew nothing about. You know, there's this guy, my father's been gone since 2010 now, so 15 years. There's this guy out here that, this white man that I see on occasion because my father was the village clerk out here, so this guy's still in government. 15 years later, whenever I see him, because it's only maybe once a year, whenever I see him, he breaks down in tears because because I look like my father. So I remind him of my father whenever I see him. And 15 years later, he just tears up every time he sees me.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah, you know.
Wow.
it's powerful.
Hmm.
Impact,
Hmm.
impact.
Hmm.
So, GK, what did you learn from navigating blended family life?
Yeah, I think, as I mentioned earlier, I think leadership is really important, right? And doesn't matter if it's dad or mom, like you've gotta have people who are committed to the broader project of raising, you know, healthy, happy kids, right? Redefining what even family means, right? That kind of leadership is really important. None of us are perfect as parents, and so having this understanding that, you know, dude ain't perfect, I'm not perfect, but we still have this project that we have to complete together. And if we can do it with as little acrimony as possible, and even when dad ain't being the best dad, give him a pass here and there. I just think all of that is important, and recognizing that it really is a team effort. That includes, grandparents, that includes friends, this whole notion of, taking a village to
Hmm.
raise a child is critical to all of it. None of us do it by ourselves. Those are the kinds of things that I have learned. It might
Hmm.
not look like one family's sort of understanding traditional family, but you can create a reality that hopefully kids will benefit from when they see the love that everyone has for them. So, those are the kinds of lessons that I've learned. And ultimately, it's about the grown ups involved, sort of keeping their eyes on the prize, and the type of leadership that they would provide, for their family and the kids.
Yeah, I agree with you on that one too, GK. I think that yeah, we may be quoting our feelings as to what that is, but I think that you said something about how your kids respond to you, I think is truly powerful, and that I think that's the marker of how you've done. You know what I'm saying? Or how we've done. We may still have our feelings about what that looked like or whatever, but seeing how they've become, how they love, respect, honor, appreciate all that we've done in their lives as well. And, in some way, even how others have perceived that. I'll come up across people, they're old teachers, some whatever, and they'll just speak to how well they were and how they did when you're not around.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And I think that that just speaks to, hey, I guess we are doing something right. You know what I'm saying? It may be a little different in the home that we may see, but outside of that, they're growing and grown to be amazing individuals, man. And I'm just so proud of them. And like you said, to hear that they're proud of you, it does hit a little different. And I totally agree with you on that.
So, this notion of traditional, I think that term, I brought it up about myself being the one that probably had the quote unquote most traditional family setting growing up. But this word tradition, I think, is probably that root part of it is really important, irrespective of the type of household you create. You create your own traditions. You create your own ways of looking at things, right? Because, like you were saying earlier, John, there really is no user's guide, no manual on fatherhood or parenthood. Everybody's making it up a little bit, might be talking to other people. They might, but a lot of it is, fortunately or unfortunately, this notion of, this is what was done to me. This is how I was raised. So I'm going to take that and do that, or take parts of it. Or sometimes the way I was raised really was, I'm going to do the exact opposite because I didn't like that at all, or whatever, So, but it still means that way impacted you in some way. It still shaped you one way or another. So I'm on, and obviously you all know this. I'm currently on my second marriage. Both of my marriages were without children. Later on in life, I was adopted by one of my students.
Mm-hmm.
One of my students. So she adopted me. She claimed me.
Mm-hmm.
And we were texting about it the other day, and she laughed because she said, "Yeah, I didn't even give you a choice in the matter." You know,
Right.
it wasn't like she asked me, "Did I want to be?" you know, it just, she just claimed me one day. She just started calling me daddy, and this was while she was still a student, and she would tell other students that I was her father, and it just stuck. So I became an instant grandfather as a result of that, because she had her first child very young, and then she had her second child while she was a student in college there with me. So I became an instant grandfather. So I'm a grandfather of four as a result of that.
Uh-huh.
Now, she had three girls, and Ace most recently, her youngest boy. So that obviously different experience there, wasn't my biological child. I guess I've been a father figure to quite a number. I've got a lot of former students that I call nephew that call me uncle
Mm-hmm.
because of that. I guess that father figure role that I took on as a result of connecting with my students. I think, though, in terms of what I learned as a result of that, I don't know, I think that, it didn't change me as a person. That was just opportunities for me to share what was already in me with more people or with other people. So we kind of been talking about unconditional love, this notion of legacy, of acceptance. I think all of those things were already baked in there because of the setting in which I was raised, the example that my father set. I think in terms of what it means to be a father, to be a dad, I'm experiencing now the part that you guys are experiencing, in that it's an ongoing thing. It's a forever thing. It's an evolving relationship, I think, because now you're dealing with the adult children versus, well, John and I are.
Mm-hmm.
Greg's got the full
Right.
spectrum.
Right.
Greg got two adults, a
Uh-huh.
teen, and a what is it? Is it toddler or no? No, I mean shorty. Two adults, a teen, and a shorty. There we will say.
There you
There
go.
you go. So you got that full spectrum. But no, I remember and enjoy, and obviously still I'm blessed to now still have the relationship with my mom. She's still here. She's in, all three of us got moms in their 70s. The adult relationship that we have with our parents, I think, is cool. I really enjoyed the adult relationship I had with my father before he passed. That was the coolest part, obviously, of our relationship. Yeah, there were a lot of days that I didn't like him growing up. You know, especially from a disciplinarian standpoint. Dude had
Right.
big hands. When you see, I mean, my hands look exactly like my father's hands, except for his were a whole lot bigger. Those teenage years were challenging, but looking back in retrospect, I appreciate everything that he did. We had those conversations as adults. He would talk
Mhm.
about how my neighbor would say to him, why are you so hard on those boys? And his response was, because life is going to be even harder. He was creating men, he was
Mhm.
building men. We didn't know that. We didn't have conversations. This
Mm.
there was never, just so you understand why I'm doing this. That conversation never happened, but as you get old, you come to understand why that happened as life starts to happen. And
Mm-hmm.
and then you realize, just like, if you think in those in terms of sports adages, right, muscle memory, right, this stuff
Mm-hmm.
automatically kicks in. I haven't done this for a while, but my body still remembers how to do it. And in some respects, that's how I've responded in life because of the training that he embedded in us as shorties, things like perseverance and whatnot, the ability to continue through some of life's challenges is second nature, right? Because the examples he set, the way he pushed us coming up, and then frankly, the fact that I have never feared another man a day on this earth
Mm-hmm.
because of the training that he instilled in us from early on. When the only man I ever feared at any point was him.
Yep.
You
So,
know,
go
one of
ahead.
the fun things to me is just all of the sort of, I'm struck by what you were saying. Like, I sat down and had like specific conversations with like either my stepfather or my dad about things, but it was like these unspoken sort of rules and ways in which I operate and
Yeah,
operated.
they were
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Miyagi in us, and we had no
Yeah,
clue.
yeah, for real. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, especially my
Wax on, wax
biological dad.
off. You had no idea.
I didn't see him every day, right? I didn't see him
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
like I did, but just so many things. Everything from like, I love cars, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
my dad. I love certain kinds of music because
Mm-hmm.
my dad. Like it became there's like a programming that happened
Mm-hmm.
that's
Mm-hmm.
wild that didn't. It wasn't like you sat down and had conversations about it. You
Mm-hmm.
just it just somehow through osmosis or something just became
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
who you are.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. To add to that, that brings up something kind of interesting. So when I reconnected with my father, we were talking about some things, and one of the things he brought up was, do you remember going to the movies and seeing the martial arts, the kung fu movies?
mm,
Mm-hmm.
And you
mm,
guys know, I
yep,
love kung
yep,
fu. I love martial arts. I practice it
yep.
as well, and just never, I think, ever put that into a perspective as to where did that kind of really
Come from.
come from. And
Mm-hmm.
when he mentioned that, he was like, "Yeah, I used to sit up there and I drive you over to the movie theaters. We go see a kung fu flick and stuff like that." Be like, "Oh my gosh, okay." Then that's where, I guess holding on to something that I didn't realize I was holding on to
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
as well. So that's some truth right there, though. Yeah, how stuff gets instilled in us. And then, Rich, you were bringing on something that I think I wanted to touch on a little bit as well, and that is you have been truly a guiding force to a lot of folks. And for some that'll be considered father-like activities. For others, it's mentoring. And things
Hmm.
of that nature, being the uncle, all of those are impacting our youth. One of
Hmm.
the things I mentioned was that, it's just how much impact we're able to provide, hopefully in a positive manner versus, a negative manner to those that are younger than us in most cases as well. Say that for me, because of my perception of fatherhood, coming up, I never felt like I could be a mentor to anybody
Hmm.
because I'm still trying to figure out how do I father my kids, before I try to mentor somebody, somebody else. And as I've grown and matured or whatever, I've had a few mentors, mentees rather, that have that again they're doing amazing. One's a interventional cardiologist, the other one is a hospitalist, and I was taking care of them grade school and high school and stuff coming up, and now to see what they've done as well. So we just never know how much we can truly have influence, how we could impact others in their journey and whatever that is that they needed that we were able to provide for them. And I think that fatherhood is it helped me to understand that fatherhood is more than just a genetic connection,
Hmm.
as well. And I think from UGK having the influence of Mr. Robertson and your dad just shows that as well, that it doesn't have to be that genetic connection in your life that gives you those guiding principles, that we grow with and need. So, you
Thank
know,
God for that, considering how
right.
many idiots there are out there,
Who
frankly.
are genetic fathers, right? Biological fathers, right? right, right, right.
If
So
that's your only source of truth,
whew, it's gonna
you
be
need a
rough for
village.
some,
You need a
right?
village, need the village.
That is
Village,
for
where you
sure.
at?
That is for sure.
So I'm gonna hit you guys with some questions here. The big questions. All right. Greg,
Hmm.
how do you show up for people in your life who need you to be steady, strong, and soft at the same time?
Mm.
Wow. I think I think
I see the
that
big questions.
my I think that's one of the things I wrestle with all the time, even beyond sort of being a father. There's a way in which I'm my mom's son, and that's that empath, right? The person who takes on people's stuff, and it's very challenging, but it does require you to be strong. It requires you to be steady, a bit, sometimes a bit more self-assured than you really are yourself. You have to at
Mhm.
least appear to have a sense of what you're doing, even if you're questioning yourself, which I do all the time.
Mm.
And so, I think there's a way in which how that is very much how fatherhood is. Like, I don't pretend to have all the answers to things. And I like to get lots of information, lots of opinions from other people,
Mm.
but a lot of it is just flat out instinct and, what you think is right in a particular moment, but also trying to be empathetic and, you know, slow down. That's the other
Mm.
thing I do is I try to slow down and try not to rush when it's a complicated situation. Take my time, but also get as much feedback from others as I can. And then once I've got the information that I think I need, then you just gotta move and make decisions, make calls.
Cool. Good answer. All right, John, I'm gonna hit you with a different one. I think I
Mhm.
like this one. This is another one of the big questions. You've talked a little bit about this already, but what does fatherhood mean to you today? But specifically, not just the role of fatherhood, because you've talked about that a bit already, but in the energy of it, the energy of fatherhood. What does that mean to you today? What's the energy like of?
Yeah, that's a great question, Rich. I think the energy comes in different forms. It can be exciting, it could be draining, it can be uplifting. It's just a matter of being present. And it's that presence at the time of when it's needed. So some of the excitement is, of course, I've got my daughter who's completed her chief residency year and get ready to start her fellowship coming up, and just so excited and proud about all that's happening. The draining is both my daughter and my son have recently moved from their locations to new locations, and it's that takes a lot of energy to try to help them, but you're also trying not to tell them how to do it, and
Mm-hmm.
you trying to let them make some of those decisions on their own, but yet and still they do kind of want some of your input on some things as well. So how do navigating that part of it, and then just seeing how both of them are accomplishing, adulting as we put it, and life is lifing type deal, and that's the uplift, that I get from that as well too. So I think just to say, the energy of it is all about the presence that that we have with that. And again, I talk about my children specifically, but even with those that are mentoring or have activity in their lives with, it's about presence. It's about how we show up, and how they are receiving that as well.
Excellent. Okay, one more question, GK, and this one actually we're all is for all of us. But GK is gonna start us off. What do you hope your kids, or in my case, grandkids too, and you all eventually will get there, but what do you hope your kids or grandkids will remember most about how you loved them? Specific
Wow.
what do you hope that your kids will remember most about how you loved them?
I hope it's somewhat, I think John got at it a little bit, and it's this notion that he let us make our decisions. He didn't try to micromanage or dictate, but was able to put us in position to succeed. And when needed, he was there, right? Wasn't doing too much, trying to do too much, but he did enough to where when needed, I knew he'd be there. I knew he loved me. He didn't make sort of unilateral decisions for me unless he saw me going down a wrong path. And, yeah, the freedom, right? He gave me the freedom to be who I am. And I'm hoping that they come away with that, you know
Mhm.
Go
and
ahead,
then
John.
Yeah.
that was really how he demonstrated love.
Hmm. Hmm.
That's cool.
Well put, GK. Well put, brother. Well put. Yep, I would say pretty similar. It's a matter of that they know, not that I just love them, support them, and whatever they're doing in life, but we, meaning Allison and myself, will always be there for them. Yet but they understand that this is now their life, that they have to live it. They're going to have the falls, they're going to have the highs, but they have to navigate through it. But I hope that through what we've been able to instill in them, that they'll be able to get through that and know that all that we've done was for them to be successful, to know that they have been nothing but love through this process, but we're always going to be there for them as well. And I think that if they grow old, and God willing they will, and can look back at how we were an impact in their lives and how they became, that's all I could ask, is that they always knew that they were loved, respected, encouraged,
Hmm.
and supported. Man, I try to tell them that all the time, and appreciate them. I tell them how much I appreciate them so much as well, and I just hope that that's something that they will always know and feel.
GK, I'm gonna start off by saying that I think that's one of the things that I appreciated most about my parents. Looking back on it, is what you were talking about, is this notion of raising whole people, that you're looking at them and saying this is your life and you need to make these decisions. And for most of my life, I felt like my parents have allowed me to navigate the path. Is my path for so many things, and I think that's important and not really germane as much to my circumstance, because my daughter, I got her as an adult, so a lot of that foundational stuff I had nothing to do with. But in terms of what I hope she remembers most about how I love her, is the right now, the being present, like you said, John, helping as much as I can to not really guide her, because, like I said, her path has already been well established that she's putting along. But, I want her always to know that she's got 100% support, unconditional love and support over here. And I'll run through a brick wall for her or my grandbabies in a heartbeat. But just that, as much support that I can come up with, however they need it, in whatever form or fashion that is, just helping them navigate this world, because I think she's a great mother and I'm so proud of what she's been doing as a single mom. What is probably for you two the most hard won lesson you wish you had learned earlier about fatherhood? You
I,
all can't
I
see them out
I'll
there, but
say.
both of them sat back. They both sat back and with the ponder pose, they both did.
Oh man, I think it's knowing that there's no right answer to being a father. I think that recognizing that you're not going to be perfect with it all the time. I think knowing that there are going to be challenges, there are going to be some hardships, there's going to be some I don't like you, why are you in my life type deal, but being able to say, hey, that's okay, but I am, and I'm here for a reason, and I'd love you regardless of what you may be feeling at this moment as well. And I'm still going to love you regardless of that as well. And I'm still going to help guide you and support you. So I think just being okay with, Greg said it earlier, not being, top dad, all the time. I mean, just we can't be. Sometimes we have to be that person that they don't want to hear, or that
If you're
person
doing the
that's
job right, yeah.
exactly,
If you're
exactly,
doing the job
showing
right,
up.
they're not
Right,
supposed to be happy with you all the time.
right. And I
If they're
think
happy
that's
with
it.
you all the time, you suck
Right,
as a father.
right.
Ju-
And I think that's it right there. Showing up at the dates that they weren't expecting to see you at, type deal. But you showed up. And that's the lasting effect that I think that they'll have, is that, hey, I may have been doing some things and maybe I wasn't right, but he was always there,
Mhm.
regardless of that as well. So,
I could list a whole bunch of things, but I think the broader thing I would say is not always being like aware of impact, and obviously getting a divorce from Miles, he was the oldest, right?
mhm,
And not really being aware of how that impacted him, right? Like,
mhm,
seriously, it did wasn't something that you thought much about. You knew sort of, intellectually, dad's no longer with mom. That's an impact, right?
mhm,
But not fully understanding the impact of something like that, particularly as he was growing up, and just sort of being surprised that it, because he's always been the most resilient kid, right? He didn't seem like it. But I'll never forget, he wrote, Miles used to always write, and he wrote some paper in school talking about what it felt like for him, dealing with a divorce. And, to have read that was was a big eye opener for me. I would have never thought it impacted him like it did, right? So, there are things like that, when you're going through it, you don't necessarily know, or you aren't necessarily aware of the impact. But if I was more conscious and aware of the impact, perhaps there are things that might have been done differently. But it was the knowledge of understanding that impact, I think,
mhm,
that made us all closer in the long run, because there were some missteps, but then I think it was like the call go out, everybody
mhm,
shows up, and
mhm,
but again, you don't necessarily know, all you're not
mhm.
always aware of the impact of the decisions that you're making with your kids, but it shows up eventually.
Right, right. Wow. Okay. Last thing I'm saying, hand this off to John real quick. Actually, you go ahead, John.
You sure? You sure we okay with that? You sure you got something
Yeah, I
on your
thought I
mind,
wanted to
brother?
say something else.
All right.
I was like, no, no,
All
go ahead.
right. Well, this has definitely been a great conversation as to our perspective on fatherhood. We understand that everybody's experience is going to be their experience. And we just
Mhm.
hope that our willingness to share our experience hopefully helped you as you listen to this podcast as well. I will say for me, and each one, please say for you as well, but I am blessed to have the opportunity to be a father, and to be a father figure to people. Again, I think for me, not feeling like I had that experience growing up, I do, however, feel that I've had an impact for those that are come behind me. And I'm thankful for that. I give God thanks for that every day. And I thank Allison, my mom, my late grandmother, for all being there with me as we continue through this journey as well.
I'll jump in. I'll say that the example that my father set for me is probably what has made me want to be that role, to play that role, that father figure role, that mentor, that uncle, because I feel like I was blessed with someone who gave me a lot, and so I want to give in that same manner. I guess it's so for me having the opportunity to do this in this way now, just really fortunate, just so proud of again of her and the person that she is, and having the opportunity to somehow contribute to what she's doing and becoming in the world is a blessing for me. It doesn't always show up in the same way, like you said. It's always a very individual thing, but however it shows up, it's an opportunity for us to do something great beyond ourselves, you know. So I appreciate the fact that I get to do this now.
Well, for me, it is keeping in mind that it's an ongoing process, and not just because I have younger ones, but even with my older ones, it's always like what could I do better? What should I be doing better? How can I be helpful? What do I need to be doing? And that's it's always in your mind. Am I doing the
Mhm.
best I can do? And what actually would be being my best actually be? And so it's again it's a constant challenging of oneself. It's become so much more emotional as I've gotten older.
Mhm.
Like everything, which by the way, I have to say about my stepfather, that gruff man back in the day. By the time he was older, little things would make him emotional, right? Like to
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
see, I think us, my siblings and I, sort of develop and grow and progress, made him emotional, right?
That's funny, man. I was talking to my wife the other day about the fact that one of the things I miss about my father from our adult relationship, this former Vietnam veteran Marine, this big dude, whenever I would see him, later in life, he would always hug me and kiss me. And so,
Mhm.
I would say, I encourage fathers to kiss their sons.
Mhm.
It just, that was it was a great moment every time that it
Mhm.
happened. Just cause, this was when I'm 35,
Right,
Mhm.
right,
not when
Mhm.
I'm 18, when I'd be like, get
Mhm.
off
right,
me or
right.
something,
Look,
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
know,
I don't know what
you
happened. Like my dad to this day, like I see him and it's like you can feel the emotion just a hug.
mm-hmm,
Mhm.
Again, like your dad, my dad was a Vietnam veteran, right?
mm-hmm.
My mom's the empath. My dad, not so much an empath, right? But
He
still
was.
has
My
an
mom not.
emotional.
My mom's
Yeah,
Mhm.
the
isn't that
stoic.
right? Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
To see that playing out in nowadays, it's just been really fascinating because I find myself being even more emotional with my kids.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Do it,
No.
whether they seem like they want it in that moment or not. Do it.
Yep.
They'll
Right.
appreciate it later.
Yep.
And I do. I want to give a little shout out to my father-in-law, though. I've been,
Mm-hmm.
knowing him for 35 years, and
Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Ash.
yes, yes, yes. So he has been impactful for me as well when it comes to, seeing how he's done with his kids and and his grandkids,
Mm-hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
just using that has been an example for me, you know, as well. So I didn't want to go through without acknowledging that yes, he has been an impact, and I love him for it. And he's dad to me now as well, and always there, always shows up for everybody, and it gives me that perspective, and I'm thankful for that as well. So, given that, I will say, as we can see, there is some complexity to this thing we call fatherhood, okay? It does not always arrive the way we expect it to, and that's okay. That's what makes life interesting. That is what makes it fun and enjoyable and spontaneous, all as one. But when it does show up, either in a child, in a relationship, or even within our communities, it asks us to grow in ways we could never imagine and embrace it, be gracious in it, give yourself space in that, and let us make sure that we are present in it. So, with that again being said, we want to thank our listeners for being a part of this with us. Please reflect on what has been said and reflect on your own thoughts and feelings as it relates to fatherhood as well. And have that conversation. Have that conversation with those that you feel you've been a father figure to in your lives and just get their impression of how that is that you're showing up. We'd love to hear your comments. We'd love to hear what you were able to learn from that as well. And as always, please like, please subscribe, and please share with those that you think could benefit from this as well. And we appreciate you and we thank you.
Take care, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.